life, the next generation, from the life journal of Thwicca, daughter of Saduk, as translated into Earth-human English. Ever since I was quite young, I have been learning about the dangers inherent in merely venturing near humans. The very notion of visiting their home planet should have terrified me beyond reason or thought. But as I perambulated from the spaceport with Father, my tentacle firmly ensnared within his, my primary impression was how pretty it all looked. I recognized the blue sky from the image upon the wall in our home dwelling, portraying Father's human friend Serena Hernandez in the process of blowing bubbles using a mixture of liquid dihydrogen monoxide and a chemical called soap. Let me make myself absolutely understood. I do now, and always have, comprehended the danger posed to any one of my species by what the average human would consider a comfortable environment. If I had not before, it would have been made clear to me when Father came home after the latest Tanarak incursion, missing 2 tentacles, not seared off by a Tanarak heat gun, but an incidental casualty of a skirmish which had seen Serena Hernandez melt half a mountain by way of released body heat, and then nearly freeze to death while wading through molten lava. Mother, of course, was shocked and horrified by this, but the worst was yet to come. After Father's tentacles were replaced by a combination of our science and theirs, constructed from lightweight but insanely temperature-resistant materials, and mated to his nerve web, the invitation had come for him to journey to Earth, just as Lieutenant Commander Hernandez had come to Fazuri. As I understood matters, they wished to reward him for his part in saving Serena Hernandez's life, at great risk to his own. To withstand the impossibly high temperatures, he was to be fitted with a heat suit, more or less, the precise opposite of what the redoubtable Lieutenant Hernandez had been wearing when she destroyed the Tanarak raiding party, saved Father from the avalanche, and created the newly named Serena Valley, however. And this is where Mother's lack of happiness came in. They wished to ensure Father's safety, and so offered to construct a second heat suit for whomever he chose to have accompanied. I am sure they were expecting him to nominate the officer from the security forces who had been there for the Tanarak incident. But he expressed discontent with the officer's grasp of just how fundamentally dangerous it could be to ignore the physical differences between ourselves and humans. And so I was offered the place, and was accepted. It was a daring step for me, but I had good, logical reasons for it. I was training for the manipulation of high-end materials, and it could only benefit to observe how commonly solid substances, such as oxygen, nitrogen, and dihydrogen monoxide, acted in their gaseous and liquid state. In this way, Earth was not unlike a large-scale laboratory for my edification. Of course, this was not the only reason I accepted Father's invitation. I had originally met Serena Hernandez when I was quite young. First over a remote screen, and then via telepresence robot. She was at the same time charmingly weird, and so similar to us that I could not help liking her. Also, she enjoyed hugs, just as I did. My species does not possess a singular organ analog to the human heart, but if we did, hugs would be the way to mine. As we passed into the direct glare of Earth's primary, I raised one tentacle to shade my gaze, while I peered. My facial shield dimmed the light enough that I could see without being dazzled, and I took a moment to marvel at the idea of living so close to a sun that the temperature difference between sunlight and shade could vary by more than the survival. Then by more than the survival range back on Fasarik, Dottie. Don't linger too long in the sunlight, Father suggested. Our suit refrigeration units are extremely sturdy, but we do not wish to risk overloading them. I knew he was worried less for his own safety than my own, which made me wish to remind him that I was almost an adult in my own right. The safety briefings for the suits had been comprehensive, and I had paid close attention. There were insulating layers sandwiched with thermal superconductors, which were in turn linked to slimline induction units, designed to absorb any energy that crept through the insulation and conduct it again to the outer layer, which was designed as a radiator. Some of these materials were among those I was learning to understand. It was a very exciting time, as my generation were the first to be able to study them as a regular learning aid, rather than in highly classified laboratories. In an emergency, we could trigger the refrigeration units to go into overdrive, which would theoretically freeze the gaseous oxygen and nitrogen around us into insulative rock. This would only last for 3 or 4 minutes, which would be hopefully enough time for help to arrive. Help, in this situation, was a mobile chamber large enough to house Father and myself, equipped with its own refrigeration unit. I had practiced entering it in drills, but I did not wish to employ it in a genuine emergency, for that would spell the end of this visit. A familiar human figure approached us. I was able to distinguish one human from another, but no more than that for most of them. Serena Hernandez was the only one I had known for the entirety of my life, and I would have recognized her under virtually any circumstances. She smiled, the oddly human gesture stretching her mouth, and I responded by waving my tentacles in greeting. Saduk, she said, her tones conveying happiness. Thwika. It is good to see you both. Wow, you've really grown, kiddo. How are your studies going? My tutors tell me I am progressing well, I said, pulling my tentacle free from Father's and raising all 4 of them for a hug. Serena, like all humans, was much taller than me, but she went down onto her prominent leg joint. I believe my human biology course called it a knee, and wrapped me up anyway. I held her close enough for my suit's exterior sensors to pick up the regular right bump of her heart, pumping the weird human mixture of liquid dihydrogen monoxide, other compounds, and biological material, biomagma, throughout her body. It felt good. Well, that's great to hear. Serena stood, then took my tentacle in her oddly jointed hand, while I allowed Father to take one on the other side. She slowed her pace to match ours as we perambulated toward what I recognized as a human transport, given that it was huge by our standards and built from materials I barely recognized. My tentacles itched to examine it up close. My interest in the vehicle was interrupted when I noticed other movement. On either side of us, I saw more humans moving in unison with us. I could not be certain, but they seemed to be carrying long objects made of impossible metal. They wore exterior clothing that was all the same, a little reminiscent of Lieutenant Hernandez's military uniform, but not identical to it. Who are they? I asked, gesturing with my spare tentacles. And what are they carrying? Their security, to ensure nothing stupid happens here on Earth, especially with two of you visiting, Serena said. The weapons they are carrying are assault rifles, firing high-velocity metal slugs. If you see one being pointed anywhere near you, drop flat and stay there. Okay, I understand, I said. But what I do not understand is why you need such security. The Tanarak could scarcely penetrate this far into your solar system, much less mount an assault on your planet, merely to assassinate Father and myself. I waved a tentacle and watched my shadow move accordingly. I am in more danger from the sunlight than from them. This is true, Father said. But humans are strange creatures. They only began traversing their solar system perhaps 8/8 of their solar orbits ago. They have many different cultures, some of which are violently opposed to one another. And some hold exceedingly strange beliefs, to the point that they would hate and fear us solely from afar and look unlike. But that is why I like Serena, I protested. She's interesting and different. As your dad said, exceedingly strange beliefs. Serena sighed. People like that are few and far between, especially since the benefits started flooding in from the Earth, Phasarib hybrid research teams. But that's another thing us humans are really good at. Grabbing hold of an idea and refusing to let it. I turned to look at Father. I thought was like that. You are, little wriggler. You are. Father looked up at Serena, then back to me. I suspect Serena meant to say, grabbing hold of a Yibad idea and refusing to let go. Yes. Serena nodded. That strange brain case movement that nobody of my species could ever duplicate. Yeah, that's about right. I mean, it suits us well when a problem needs to be fixed. But sometimes it bites us in the ass. I giggled at her vivid imagery. I shall attempt to only hold on to good ideas, and let bad ones drift away on the wind. You know what the trouble with that kind of resolution is. Serena looked down toward us both. Of course, Father's long association with her had allowed him to understand her thought processes, as well as any of our two species comprehended each other. Every idea looks like a good one at first. The trick lies in distinguishing the clean samples from the dross. Got it in one. Sedek. Serena reached over the top of my brain case to offer Father a high five, which he returned with one of his artificial tentacles. We entered the transport, and Serena secured herself with a flexible strap that ran across her body and back. Father and I were able to fasten them around ourselves, though I was entirely fascinated with the materials they were constructing. Are these hydrocarbons? What are the solidification and vaporization temperature? Serena laughed. Now that I don't actually know. But we can talk to people after the ceremony who do. We've got any number of folk from a bunch of scientific fields who are here just because they heard you were going to be attending and want to invite you to study on Earth. Studying here on Earth? Not just visit? Father was audibly and visibly surprised at that. Do they consider her such a prodigy? Well, she is pretty damn smart, Serena said, rubbing the top of my brain case with her knuckles in what I interpreted as a gesture of fondness. I've looked over her transcripts, and she's good enough to keep up with the best. But even if she was dead average or just plain stupid, I suspect they'd still make the offer. In the latter case, it would be more a situation of behavioralists studying hair, while seeing how much Earth education she can take on. But, as it is, the offers are entirely genuine. Some of these people would give any 2 limbs, and the vital organ of your choice, for the opportunity to say they had a bubbler attending their classes. At first, I thought Serena was making a joke about how eager these people were to have me study with them. But a closer look at her expression did not reveal a smile. That was definitely something to think about. While it would be good for Earth-Fazriep relations, I am concerned for her safety. Father took 2 of my tentacles in his. It is relatively easy to ensure multiple backups for our well-being in the case of a random equipment failure over the course of a short visit. To maintain that sort of vigilance and keep Thwicca alive over the course of a full Earth solar orbit, while allowing her complete freedom of movement, would require a vastly higher investment of resources and time. I would be willing to abide by any and all safety regulations that were laid down for me, I offered. The chance to examine this sheer abundance of high-temperature materials in real time, with just my suit between my tentacles and the object of my study, was extremely tempting. The leaves on the yew trees we were passing by, for instance. I wanted to look at them up close and figure out how they were. Well, just spitballing here. We could require a dedicated refrigerated dorm room for you. Serena chuckled. With the hybrid tech we've got access to now, a high-end power plant just to keep that as cold as you need, it wouldn't be all that hard to put together. The cost might make their eyes bulge a little, but if they're bound and determined to have you study with them, it's their choice. Father intertwined his free tentacles in a gesture of agreement. With backups, of course. And backups of backups. In addition, I have not forgotten the fact that there are people on Earth who would hurt or kill her just for being different. So we have to not only plan for accidents, but also deliberate incidents. Serena's expression indicated that she had also not forgotten her own words. Unfortunately, some humans are more like the Tanarak than bubblers. We've got a pretty bleak history of doing a lot of nasty stuff to each other. And it's not all over and done with yet. She put her arm around me and gave me a brief hug. Don't get me wrong, kiddo. Koi, like you and your dad a whole lot. Everyone on board the Jovial Diver was utterly thrilled when we managed to open lines of communication with the eye-distant knowledge. The majority of humans you'll ever meet are totally on board with the whole bubbler-human partnership. It's just that there's always a few who insist on trying to spoil it for the rest. She sighed sadly. If I were any judge. Anyway, I am still willing to make the attempt, I said. Perhaps if they see me doing the normal things that human students do, they will be less likely to see me as something to be hated. Maybe. Serena did not sound overly confident at the idea. I mean, don't get me wrong, you're cute as hell, and I'm pretty sure there'll be plushies of you making the rounds in the very near future. If there was a contest for alien species we most wanna cuddle, you guys would win it tentacles down. You'd have a lot more trouble winning over hearts who were 8 feet tall with claws and fangs, just saying. But with most people, you've already won the fight. There's very few who are on the fence about how they feel. I had heard about the plushies of Father from Serena herself. During one of our video conversations, she had gleefully shown it to us, to Father's quiet horror and Mother's distinct amusement. I had initially shared Mother's feelings on the subject, but now there was the chance I would have one made of me. I was not sure how I felt. Would humans see me as an inanimate figurine to be manipulated as they saw fit? Should that be the case, they would very quickly learn otherwise. If not myself, who? I asked. There is always somebody who must be first, and being the first to do anything always holds inherent dangers. I do not know anyone else of my generation who has spent as much time around humans, or rather, human, as myself. I will admit, I do not know your customs and idiosyncrasies as perfectly as I might, but misunderstandings are far less likely to happen with me than with others. Father twined his tentacles together again. While I'm still not entirely in favor of this idea, she does have a distinct point, Serena. The idea of having cross-species student exchange has been raised, and if I've learned anything about humans, the wilder and crazier the idea, the more likely somebody's going to say, "Why the hell not?" and go ahead with it. And if anyone's going to get it right, it's Thwicka. Tell me I'm wrong. At that moment, the transport came to a halt. You're not wrong, Saduk. Serena gave me a serious look. Okay, kiddo, we've got to go and do the ceremony now. But I want you to think hard about if you really want to do this. Because if you do, it's going to mean a huge upheaval to a lot of things. Got it? I understand. I managed. I will consider it carefully. We climbed out of the transport, and the security humans, they must have had transports of their own, fell into line on either side of us. I looked with interest at their assault rifles, even at the temperatures we were under now. They were solid, and showed no signs of melting or combusting. Privately, I resolved to watch the process of how they formed such intractable materials into useful shapes. When we reached the stage, 2 of the security force stayed with me, while the rest moved to take up positions around it. Father and Serena climbed up onto the stage, which was draped with brightly colored cloth. I thought I recognized the national banner of the United States. Reds and blues and angular white polygons. Anyway, another human moved to stand beside me. One of the security people said something. But the human showed him a small rectangular object, and the security person nodded and moved away. I looked up at the newcomer warily. Hello? I am Thwicka. Hello, Thwicka. This human was an older female, if I were reading the body cues correctly. She smiled and crouched down before me. I'm Commodore Lorimar. I've known your father for a long time, ever since the jovial diver encountered the big, high-distant knowledge in Jupiter orbit. It's very good to meet you at last. Oh, hello. It is good to meet you as well. I knew Commodore Lorimar's name, but I had only seen an image of her once, and that was a long time. Thank you for being an exemplary commander for Lieutenant Commander Hernandez. She has many good things to say about you. I offered my upper right tentacle for a human-style handshake. Her smile became wider as she shook it. Well, the lieutenant has distinguished herself several times over, so it's not all my doing. Getting up, she moved to stand alongside me. We watched as humans I assumed to be important made speeches, which held many words, but did not say much. Then, medals, made of a multicolored metallic material that I very much wanted to examine, were attached to Father's and Serena's respective outerwear. A patch had been added to Father's heat suit to allow it to be affixed there. More speeches were made. Then the watching humans applauded by slapping their hands together. I was learning many human customs today. Father and Serena rejoined us as the other humans began to disperse. I went to him for a hug while Serena faced Commodore Lorimar. "Ma'am," Serena said, and made the respectful arm gesture I understood to be a salute. "Lieutenant Commander Hernandez." Dot. Commodore Lorimar returned the salute. "I'm pleased to see you've recovered from your injuries. And you too, Saduk." "Well, recovered and replaced," Father replied with a hint of amusement. "I actually like these prosthetics your scientists helped us make. The tactile sensitivity is very close to my natural tentacles, and I can literally touch molten lava with them." "Well, that's good to hear." Commodore Lorimar gestured toward me. "It was a pleasure to meet your daughter. She seems very bright." "Yes, ma'am," agreed Serena. "We were actually talking about the concept of her coming here to study for a year. Or at least, I'm reasonably certain she's going to have the offer made to her." Commodore Lorimar raised her eyebrows. "Well, that should pose an interesting challenge for our engineers. Of course, that would require for Thwicka to be on board with this idea." All eyes, human and otherwise, turned to me. I made my decision. "Yes," I said. "I want to do this." Okay, Bubbleverse 6.